Hey, let's go. No problem.
Yeah, I think after the holidays when you're getting the routines back, and then I think the other thing is a lot of times with illness, I think we've had a lot of flu and norovirus and things. Luckily at the schools right now, we've been pretty, I shouldn't say anything. We're pretty healthy.
Exactly.
But anyway, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, parents, for coming too. And I am recording this, so we can always look back on it, and it'll be on our YouTube channel if you have any, if you want to look at this again later or you as part of it. So thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. Thanks for the introduction. And it's always a pleasure to be here with the community that I've been presenting to for many years now. And as Susan mentioned, this is a time of year where I do get a lot of a lot of parents saying, please help me reset because everything went off the rails over the holidays and because of illness and travel and late nights and all of that. So just to let everybody know a little bit about the structure of this presentation, we're going to go through some slides here with information about what I call becoming sleep smart, sort of helping parents understand the underpinnings of sleep and why their children may be doing the things they're doing or why they're not doing the things that they would like them to do. Um, and we're going to go through that pretty quickly, really, in about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes maybe. And then I'm going to leave the rest of the time that we have together for questions, because that's probably what most of you have come here with and for. And I'm happy to answer as many of them as I can. So let's jump right in and talk about the things that I feel you really need to know about your child's sleep because you've exhausted yourself as well as the Google search engine. um, so moving right along, I like to start with a few common myths that I hear from a lot of parents who contact me about sleep and why their child isn't sleeping necessarily. Um, One of the very commonly held myths that I hear is, oh, my child is 12 pounds in 12 weeks. They should be sleeping through the night. Um, Another commonly held myth is that babies will start sleeping through the night when they start solids. And then the last most commonly held one is, if you just put your baby to sleep late, they're going to sleep late in the morning. So that all this putting your child to sleep early is nonsense. Just put your baby to sleep late. That's when things will change and get better. Unfortunately, these are all myths, and I'll go through why they are very shortly. So, if there's only one thing you remember, I want parents to remember that learning to put yourself to sleep is a skill that is exactly that. It's learned. And some of our children are going to have an easy time learning that skill, and some are just going to have a more challenging time, just like the acquisition of any skill, right? Whether it's crawling, walking, talking. Um, One thing to really understand about sleep is that it is a neurological development. Okay. And most babies are ready to sleep these longer stretches or quote through the night most consistently around 6 months. Of course, with variation, but that tends to be a good sort of benchmark about when a child is developmentally able to sleep that really long stretch and potentially the whole night. And it's also important to remember that people have different definitions of what it means to sleep through the night because I've talked to many parents where they say, oh, I'm not sure why my child is up 2 or 3 times at 9 months old because at 4 months old, she slept through the night. And I say, really? No night feedings? And they say, well, no, no, no. There were a couple of night feedings. And so I say, well, your definition of sleeping through the night at 4 months may be very different from mine, right? So it's just important to keep that in mind. And so if we were to think of the science behind sleep, there really technically is no sleeping through the night because every mammal essentially wakes up and goes back to sleep several times every single night. So night wakings are normal. It's a normal brain function for all of us to wake up very briefly and then settle back into sleep. Um, and if you were to think of the sort of structure of that even more sort of in more black and white, we really have two kinds of sleep. The beginning of our night stretch is always our deepest sleep, which is called non-REM. And so from bedtime to the middle of the night is our deepest sleep. And then from the middle of the night until the morning, we are in active or REM sleep, which is when we see the most night wakings, just because the actual quality of that sleep is very light. Okay. And so that transition that all of us go through, including our babies and children, is normal. The issue is, how do we teach our child to fall asleep and then be able to go back to sleep? And so going even one step further, if you were to think of the architecture of sleep, right? Sleep progress will move from bedtime to overnight and to daytime sleep or naps. So when parents say, well, I'm going to start coaching my child to sleep better during daytime or naps, unfortunately, the progress really tends to be, if we start building a good template at bedtime, then we help address the night wakings, and then daytime sleep may even get better on its own once that night sleep is better. But ultimately, it's usually the last piece of the puzzle. So it's helpful to think of that sort of architectural progress, because that's where you're going to see things change the most and in the most helpful way. So many parents will contact me and just say, here's my situation. I just don't know if this is normal, right? And it's very hard to know, because we're overloaded with information, whether it's on Reddit or from social media. You're the most commonly, these are the things that I deal with most commonly from parents. My baby goes to sleep really easily, like bedtime is easy, but then she's up several times a night. Another one is, my baby needs to be nursed or rocked or held to sleep, right? And then another very common one is, my baby will only sleep being held or if I'm co-sleeping. And then I would say last is, my child just won't nap, right? Night sleep is great, but naps are just a mess. So I would say those are the things that are most common issues that I help parents address. And so this idea of what's normal, right? Again, hard to know, but very important to get a sense of. And so the developmental age of your child is important in terms of assessing what they're capable of, even in terms of, was your baby born full term or not, right? A baby that's born at around 40 weeks is on a trajectory that's fairly predictable in terms of their development and when they're able to hit developmental milestones. And a baby that's born, let's say 4 weeks early, may just need a little bit more time to sort of catch up. And more often than not, they do very quickly, but that's an important piece of the puzzle. Are there any medical conditions underlying the sleep challenge? Reflux, acid reflux, and any pain or discomfort associated with that is something that I help a lot of parents with. Any ear, nose, and throat issues, like, frequent colds, congestion, things like that. Is there any anemia or low iron stores? What is your family history? All these sort of underlying medical conditions can be sleep robbers and can stand in the way of the behavioral part of sleep that needs to be learned falling into place easily. So these are all things that I help parents sort of screen out to the best of my ability and potentially go to the doctor for, or, see a specialist about. Okay, again, going through what's normal. The American Academy of Pediatrics will say that babies under 6 months may not have regular sleep patterns. That does not mean they're not capable of learning how to sleep. It just means that things can be really variable, and that's normal. And in terms of these general guidelines of how much sleep your child needs, because I get a lot of parents who are like, my child is going to have brain damage because they're not sleeping enough. The vast majority of the parents I'm speaking to are doing the absolute best they can to get their child enough sleep, right? I don't talk to the parents who don't care about that stuff. But in terms of an average, it's anywhere from 17 to 14 hours under 1 year, right? Even though those hours may be very broken up, especially the first few months. And so because we become so data driven, whether we're talking about, our steps every day or our child's sleep, I always encourage parents to look at your child's mood rather than the data that your subscription-based app is giving you. Because some children are really low sleep needs, and parents are like, gosh, this child just doesn't nap, but they're really happy as a clam. Okay, don't worry about the data then, right? If your child is miserable and cranky and seems tired, in some ways it doesn't matter if the data is correct, right? So look at your child's mood, because that's a better indicator. And the data is really hard to get away from, I know, but just remember that anything that you're paying for, whether it's an ads or a subscription, there's a reason that they're giving you that information. And 50 years ago, we all had kids, and somehow we survived without the data. Okay, so getting back to this idea of sleeping through the night, which is what so many parents call me about, right? Again, as I said before, there is no sleeping through the night. We have to help our children learn that they can go to sleep, put themselves to sleep, and that template is what starts at bedtime and then will be able to be replicated again and again at night wakings and for naps, right? So think about it this way. If the template is, I'm in somebody's arms and I'm really cozy and I am falling asleep nursing or on a bottle, I wake up a few hours later and I don't know how I got to this crib by myself. Eventually, whether that happens at 4 months or 14 months, your child has an unsustainable template at bedtime, right? So what they know at bedtime is what they're going to try to replicate in general at night. And one thing I will say, because it's so common and it happens every few months for the first few years of life, developmental leaps are a big reason why children will regress in sleep or change what they were doing before. Many parents will say, well, I don't know what's going on because I didn't change anything, but my child is up 2 or 3 times a night. And I say, well, a lot of it could be a developmental leap. They're trying to practice things. They're sort of very energized, and it's maybe time for them to start practicing some of those skills more and more so that they're not so interested in practicing them at night. And we can talk about how to do that in a really helpful way. And so we talked a lot about, or I talked a lot about the night sort of issues. Naps, really, children under 3 really need regular naps in terms of frequency and timing. And that many parents will say, well, that if I don't let my child nap during the day, they're going to sleep better at night. And unfortunately, it's a little bit chicken and egg. Sometimes when naps are not great, the nights are not great. Or if the nights aren't great, the naps won't be good. So at some point, they kind of all have to work together. And it really is chicken and egg. And so the onset of that bedtime sleep, right, which then will carry through for night wakings, has to eventually get solid for naps as well, because it all needs to work together in concert. And so people always say, okay, so what do I do? Right? I'm coming to you to tell me what to do so that I can get some more sleep for myself and my child. So I would say the first thing I suggest to about 99% of the people I speak to is crib acclimatization, which means, and it's very counterintuitive for most of us, but making sure your child knows what their sleep space is when they're awake. Okay, because imagine you move to a new house and somebody says, okay, down that long hallway, at the end of that dark space is your bedroom. Go ahead, go to sleep. you would think, no, 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 I need to see it when it's light out and when it's day out to make sure everything's set up. And so I know what I'm doing when I'm trying to go to sleep. So it's the same thing for our child. And we really underestimate how much they understand, but making sure your child knows this is my crib, I'm okay. This is what it looks like. This is what it smells like. And even this is what it feels like, right? So making sure your child goes into their sleep space twice a day, optimally, for a few minutes, literally like 3 to 5 minutes when they're awake, so they can look around and say, oh, this is my chill crib and I'm fine, is really helpful. Because most of us at some point are doing the transfer, putting this baby to sleep in our arms, transferring them, and then inevitably that stops working. So making sure your child is familiar with their sleep space is really important. The second thing is assessing if night feeds are necessary or a habit, right? So working with your pediatrician to say, yes, my child is 5 months old and still needs a night feeding, no problem. But at 8 or 9 months old, probably not, right? Assessing if those feedings are behavior based or calorically necessary is sort of the next thing to assess usually. The third is being consistent about the thing you're doing at bedtime, again, and then doing it at night wakings, and then eventually at naps. In terms of behavioral solutions, there are basically three main categories. I know that there's like 14,000 different sleep books out there with, that all claim that they're going to help you teach your child how to sleep. But essentially, those are sort of three main categories. There's extinction, which is popularly known as cry it out, which means I say good night, I love you, I leave the room, I don't go back in until the morning. Timed checks, which is also very well known as Ferber, meaning I will put my child down, say good night, I love you, and I will acknowledge at increasing intervals, let's say 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, helping my child have enough time to calm down, but acknowledging that they're working on it and it's really hard. And then third, camping out, or the chair method, which is sort of staying with your child, comforting them, helping them learn that they can actually fall asleep in their crib, but then eventually in gradual night progressions, moving out of the room. Let's say in 6 nights, 9 nights, people do all different sort of intervals. I typically suggest within a week to be out of the room completely. And then in terms of the older kids, I help parents figure out what is going to help their child feel that they're acknowledged, that they have some tools, but that they're putting themselves to sleep, and that the parent is there and sort of supportive, but not doing too much, because it's very easy for us as parents to do too much. And then our methods are actually backfiring and causing a new habit to start, right? So visual cues for toddlers and preschoolers are family photos, right? When children say, but I miss you so much in the middle of the night. Okay, here's a family photo. Here's our picture. When I miss you, I look at a picture. And so when you miss me, you can look at the picture and I'll see you in the morning. Visual schedules are really helpful, right? When toddlers seem sort of out of control and I want this and I want that, here's the visual schedule we're following. It's the same thing every night, right? And printing it out very simply for your child to help everyone stay on track every evening, which is really hard for some of us. And even things like a stop sign, right? A lot of families have a very hard time keeping a child in a room, right? Putting a stop sign on the parent's door and saying, when you see this, buddy, that means you can't come in, and stop. Right. So there's lots of things like that that I offer as suggestions for the older age children. And of course, you can always reach out to me. This is my website, goodnightsleepcoaching.com, with questions and concerns. Now that I have flown through all of that, I would love to get into some questions so that I can help with suggestions and talk about your particular concerns. And so when we open it up, please just tell me the age of your child and what's going on so that I can help you. Okay, Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi.
My daughter is 21 months old. And we sleep trained her, and she a year ago, and she usually sleeps beautifully, 7 to 7.
Mm,
And
great.
then she naps from about 12:30 or 1 to 3. In the past, I'd say month, she has been up for a long time after we put her in her crib, up to an hour. Are we expecting too much sleep?
Um, what is she doing in that time?
She lies in the crib and plays with her lovey. Sometimes she calls out. She'll say, "Open, please." Um, but she's usually not crying, not fussing. She also has been wanting a bottle at bed recently, which she never had before.
Mm-hmm.
And I initially thought she was just procrastinating, but she will drink a fair amount.
Okay. Um, so how, so she ends up falling asleep about 8 p.m.
Yeah, between 8 and 8:30. Yeah.
and and she sleeps well until 7.
Yes, most of the time.
And what is her nap like?
Well, her nap is at school, but it is, I mean, the data I have is that it's from about 12:45, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock usually.
Okay. And at home, is that also similar?
Yes, yes. Sometimes at home she'll sleep even longer.
Right. Um, I think you could, I don't think you're doing anything wrong, and I don't think you're expecting too much of her. If you wanted to let her have more quiet playtime, you certainly could. Let's say moving to 7:30, 7:45 in the crib, right? The one thing I would be cautious about though is make sure that she's not getting a second wind and like, oh, okay, now it's time to run around for another 45 minutes. We're still keeping it super quiet and chill because it's bedtime and it's evening, right? And with the bottle, it's it may be a comfort thing. It may be sort of a vestige of when she was younger, and it's sort of a nice association. If she's and I'm sure she's taking all that sort of she can get from it, right?
Right.
But I would be careful that it's not a slippery slope and all of a sudden she starts asking for more, or in the middle of the night or whatever, because at this age we want to eliminate bottles anyway and really move to a straw cup or just a regular cup
Okay.
and have her self-soothe other ways.
Okay.
So
And what about when she potty trains? Anything to know about that and sleep, and anything to know about when she goes to a toddler bed?
absolutely. So that's a whole that's a whole other discussion. In terms of potty training. So uh, we can't potty train at night in the sense that it's very much like puberty. A hormone is released, the bladder is tightened, and it can hold, right? So when your child is dry for, let's say, 2 weeks in a row, they're kind of trained at night. And there's a big variation of when kids are, again, mature enough to do that, because some are just naturally dry very early and some take a lot longer. During the day, you can obviously, go for it if you feel she's ready and you're ready. In terms of moving to a bed, I really suggest that parents wait until as close to 3 years old as possible. The reason being, children have fledgling impulse control. right? It's not about their intelligence. And actually, the more intelligent, the more likely they're going to figure out how to get out of the room. So I usually recommend staying in a crib as long as possible, as long as the weight restriction is fine. And that tends to be as close to 3 years old, because that's a time developmentally when they have a lot more ability to control their impulses and stay in one place all night, which is really hard, right? Because then, let's say, and I talk to parents all the time, my child finally successfully climbed out of the crib and it really freaks me out. So they have to be in a bed or on the floor. If that's the case, the room becomes the crib, right? So we want to safety proof as much as possible and put an extra tall gate on the doorway if they're in the room alone, because who knows what they're doing at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've talked to parents where the child opened the front door, went downstairs, talked to the doorman. So, it's all about safety at that age. And that comes with a whole different level of helping them understand what your expectations are and that we really need to keep them safe.
Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. Andy, I see your hand up.
Hi. So I have first off, thank you for doing this. I always appreciate it. I actually came to your talk last year as well.
Oh, good.
So I have a 20-month-old Ezra. Sorry, I'm a little light on sleep, and I'll tell you why.
I understand.
And so he has a few bad habits, and so we need some advice on how to break those habits.
Mhm.
So he will wake up twice in the middle of the night and need to be soothed. Usually that comes in the form of I will lie down on the floor next to his crib and stay there until he falls back asleep. Sometimes I take him out of the crib and lie on the couch with him until he falls asleep again. And also the bedtime has involved a lot of that same sort of behavior. We used extinction with our first kid. It worked exceptionally well, but it's really not sticking with Ezra. He will scream for like over an hour. We've done it, and it's just not effective with him. So would love your advice on how to kind of break these bad habits, because he's a very persistent young man.
Yes, clearly, which will serve him well later in life, right?
Yes.
He has a crib. Is he in the room by himself or with someone else?
He's in the room with his brother, who sleeps like a rock and is unflappable through the night. So great.
Wow. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
What time is bedtime and what's that process like for him?
Bedtime is about 7:15 to 7:30, and we give him a bottle with milk. We read one book, get him into his PJs, and turn out the light and put him in his crib. Yeah, we've got a little, like a mini routine going.
Okay, and he puts himself to sleep.
Yeah, but so part of it, sometimes he'll demand that I stay until he falls asleep, but we've been kind of weaning off of that. I'll say I'll be right back, and then I just don't come back. But which is good, but that works at the start of the night. It does not work in the middle of the night.
Right. Okay. And what are his naps like?
He takes one good nap at around 12:30 school for about an hour.
Okay. And does he do that at home as well?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm just jumping in. I'm Andy's wife and mother of Ezra.
Hi.
He takes more like a 1.5, 2 hour nap in the middle of the day.
Oh, sorry.
It's on the school schedule, right, of his class. And so we try our best to maintain that on the weekends.
Right.
But also it's not something, we really within our control since it's 5 days a week at school.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, it sounds like that's a very appropriate amount of time for his age and all of that. Is there, you said he's 20 months, right? So he's not quite to, do you feel like, has he hit his milestones early in general?
Which milestones?
Like walking, talking, that kind of stuff.
Walking early, his comprehensive language is very good. He's got about 40 words now. So on the lower half of the curve for talking, but he's very communicative.
Okay.
He lets us know what he wants.
Yeah, it sounds
I
like
do
it.
wanna I do wanna add one thing, which was he's always been a terrible sleeper, hence why we also attended this last year. Um, but he throughout most of his life he woke up once a night, and then would often wake up very early, like at between 4:30 and 5:30. But we then went to Spain. He slept amazingly in Spain. But then when we came back, that's when this and came back probably about 3 weeks ago. That's when things got dramatically worse.
Mhm.
Where, and I mean, understandably, right, because the time change kind of messed with him. But now he's waking up twice a night, and being much more demanding about us being uh, like lying next to him in the crib to actually fall asleep, even though that we know that's something he's fully able to do and has been able to do since as a newborn.
Right, right. But it sounds like sleep was always a challenge for him. When he was a young baby, did he have any like acid reflux or anything like that?
No.
Okay, all right. He's just very high energy, alert, and is gonna let you know what he needs or
Mhm.
thinks he needs, right? Okay. So even though he slept really well while you were away, there's something about the transition back home that all of a sudden he went through a leap and was like, oh, actually, I can tell you what to do. And chances are you're going to do it. Right. So
Yeah.
feel encouraged by the fact that he basically puts himself to sleep very easily at bedtime. For some reason, he has it's like the night wakings are just his Achilles heel, right? They're just really challenging. He wakes up and he's like, I don't really know what to do. Could you just come here and do it for me? But needless to
Yeah.
say, he doesn't need that. He's just demanding it.
Mhm.
So Andy, I think your instinct is totally right that you can say, I'm going to check on you. I'm going to encourage you to actually check, but in a very specific way, and do the same thing at these crazy night wakings, because it's not sustainable or necessary for you to go and lay down on the floor or
Yeah.
scoop him up and lay down on the couch with him, because that then tells him, well, I actually can't go to sleep because daddy does it for me.
Mhm.
Right. So it becomes this downward spiral of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't do it because he does it for me. So then I guess I really can't do it. Right.
Right.
And that feels very counterintuitive, but unfortunately that's how it kind of works. And so I would say starting this weekend, and it's great that your older child isn't bothered by this, but you might just want to give him a heads up, like, it's okay if the baby yells, it's all right,
Yeah.
um tell Ezra I'll be back after my chore. Okay. We all have a million things to do. So this is not lying. It's just sort of stretching the truth a little bit. Buddy, I'll be back to check on you after I go to the bathroom, clean up the kitchen, take out the garbage, whatever it is you want to say. Just have sort of that laundry list in your head. I'm going to check on you in increasing intervals. So you're kind of doing time checks, whether that's at bedtime or the middle of the night. And I know the middle of the night could be very long, but we have to push through this so that he understands nobody's picking me up, and dad's not going to come lay with me. I know he wants it. I'm sure he also wants a trip to Disneyland.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to just devolve over time. So I would use those time checks, which I like to call chore checks at this age, because he understands what it means, right? It's not 3 seconds, it's not 3 hours, but that sense of the task. I have to go to the bathroom. He probably has a sense of that. And so that's why I like using that language.
Mhm.
So that's what I would do, and just stick with it. And the first few nights are going to be tough, but he will get back to that better place if you can be consistent.
Got it. So that's like the Ferber method almost.
Yeah, but with this age, I like the idea of the task, because if you say 3 minutes, that's totally insignificant, right?
Yeah, he doesn't
Doesn't mean
know.
anything until your child is like 6 or 5, right? So
Great. We'll give it a shot. But thank you
that's what
so
I would
much.
do. Yeah,
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. Okay, Janine, I saw your hand up.
Hi, thank you so much.
Sure.
So we have a 20-month-old, and he is getting big enough and dexterous enough to climb out of the crib. He started
Mhm.
putting his leg over, so we
Mhm.
had to just put him in the mattress on the floor, and there's a mat around him. We did this maybe a week ago, and he had a lot of difficulty the first few nights. Didn't want to stay on the bed, was walking around. We took away all the toys. He's alone in this room, and we're able to lock the door to keep him inside. We baby proofed everything. But I think around that time that we had to change him to the mattress, he started spending taking a lot more time to fall asleep. So it's taking 45 minutes to an hour for him to fall asleep.
Mhm.
And we'll start bedtime between 7:30 and 8. We did a
Mhm.
modified sleep training when he was about 9 months old. Basically 5 minutes crying, 1 minute in to console, and then leaving, and then 5 minutes crying again. That worked very well. But he was so he would go to sleep around 7:30 very quickly, only sleeping until about 5:45 in the morning though, which was kind of still hard on us, but he would
Mhm.
sleep pretty well through the night. Uh, he still sleeps pretty well through the night, but I think something changed moving into the mattress and out of the crib, because he woke up last night at midnight and he wouldn't go back to sleep unless I cuddled with him, which I did for 2 hours. He fell asleep after about maybe half an hour, but then as I tried to move, he'd wake up. So I just stayed there for 2 hours.
Right.
And then he slept until about 7:30 in the morning. So
Mhm.
things are just a little bit off, and I'm trying to figure out whether it might be, definitely related to the changes, but should we be putting him to sleep earlier to decrease the amount of time it takes for him to fall asleep? Are there any suggestions you have? Maybe he's taking so long to fall asleep because he's so excited because now he has freedom and he gets that second wind. I don't know.
I would say it's just part of the transition, in the sense that it's a big move, right? His universe has sort of changed. All of a sudden,
Mm.
he went from a crib to the floor. Um, and so it's not unusual that it's taking him longer. I wouldn't move the bedtime right now, but what I would do is put a couple of things in place that are going to help support him putting himself back to sleep at night wakings, right? You don't want to get into the habit of laying with him, because then that's going to start earlier and earlier, and you may as well just start together at 7:30, 8 o'clock, which I'm sure is unreasonable for you, and probably not your plan. So I wouldn't change the bedtime. Does he have anything like the hatch or some type of clock in the room that indicates when it's bedtime or morning time?
No, he doesn't. That's
Okay, so that's also something, and Andy and Tara, that's something that I would suggest for Ezra as well. Anything that helps your child, your toddler, basically, after any age like 15 months and on, some type of clock which indicates this is bedtime, nighttime, and this is morning, right? And so I just say the hatch. You don't have to get the hatch, but anything, even like a nightlight on a timer, that when we can point to it and say, look, the clock says it's night night, right? That's nighttime until it goes off or turns a different color. Because again, time is totally nebulous for children until they're significantly older, more mature. So if we can say, look, it's nighttime, buddy, you got to go back to sleep. There's no magic in it, but it's a visual cue. This is why, It's not random. It's not me being mean or saying, I don't want to deal with you. It's like, this is night. You have to go to sleep. Okay. So I would get anything like that that you think is going to be appealing or easy for you to deal with, and it should go off automatically. We don't turn it on because, again, we don't say when it's bedtime, the clock tells us. And so it also makes it very sort of third party neutral. It's not mommy telling me, it's the clock, because that's reality. So I would definitely suggest that. I would suggest saying, buddy, I will stay and watch you get into your bed. Right? He's perfectly capable. If he was capable of climbing out of that crib, he is capable of going and laying down. I would stay at the doorway and say, buddy, you go lay down. Okay. And even during the weekend, you can like practice, because a lot of kids will say, but you fix my blanket perfectly. You fix it for me. No. Okay. I'm going to set my timer. I'm going to see how fast you can put your blanket on. Make it sort of an appealing game. Like, let's see. Oh my gosh, you did that in 10 seconds. That's so great. Encourage his independence. Encourage and bolster his ability to lay down. Right? And chances are, as he gets used to this new transition, it will get easier for him, because from what you're telling me, he's actually doing pretty well. But it's a transition, right? Even if it is positive, it's still change. And he needs time to get used to it, and sort of his mind may be racing for that onset of sleep. Like, wow, okay, this is really different. And what do I do? And that's okay. It's his wind down time. I don't think from your description he's getting a second win necessarily. I just think he needs that time. And I would also allow for like a board book or something that he can sort of occupy himself with in a positive way that is calm and quiet.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I have
would do
been
all
telling
of
him.
those things.
Okay. I have been telling him as part of the 45-minute to 1 hour long fall asleep period that,
Mhm.
hey, I have to leave. I have to go soon. And then he'll stop playing with his toys and come hug me and fall asleep for like 2 seconds, but then he wakes up. And I realized as I tell him more I have to leave, he starts to fall asleep, and he'll hug me until he falls asleep. But I don't want him to get adjusted to that so that he requires it.
Right.
And I think I might be training him to do that.
So that's really good information. So use job checks, right? Chore checks, like I suggested before. Say, but right away, don't wait. Right? Say,
Right.
I tucked you in. It's night. I'll be back when I'm done with my chore. He's going to give you a hug. Leave. Give him at least, let's just say 10 minutes. Right? Go clean up the kitchen. Come back around the door. Peek in. If he's quiet, don't say anything. If he's like, mommy, buddy, great job. It's nighttime. I'm going to do my next chore.
Okay.
Right? Give him
Thank you.
15 minutes. So you're increasing those intervals, and it's a very minimal check-in. It's not going back in. It's not retucking. It's not another hug. We get one hug. I know that feels kind of tough, but you know that everything's okay. He's just trying to extend that time, which isn't helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. Anne.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. It's really great.
Of course.
So we have a 4-year-old, so different age, and she has what you referred to at the beginning. In the second half of the night, she would wake up and she wouldn't be able to put herself back to sleep. And even with my help, she would get very angry and aggressive because she wants her dad instead. So she's always asking for her father and is making a lot of noise, waking up her little brother who's like sleeping really well. And we tried everything. We have this colored watch, which is great. Her 2-year-old brother tells her it's not green yet, just be quiet, but it's not helping with her. And it's even impossible for me to get her back to sleep, and I can't put that burden on my husband every night.
Yeah.
So we're really desperate about those like 2 or 3 hours until everyone should get up.
What does she want at that time?
Just daddy and like just having his ear. So she always wants to go like this on his ear, and nothing else would like comfort her. like we're coming from a history of night terrors, like really bad night terrors, like an
Ah.
hour a night. But those are gone since we moved to the US a couple of months ago. But like she's still in this mood. I think she's more awake. It's not a night terror
Yeah.
anymore, but
Yeah.
like she's very frustrated, very aggressive.
Yeah. So, you know, night terrors can be very disruptive, and they tend to, you know, really subside, and the night wakings tend to really subside closer to 5 years old. So things may continue to improve. I mean, I'm glad they have, but they may continue to. I would work with there's something about dad, obviously, but he can't be there for her to satisfy this fuzzy feeling or whatever it is she's looking for, right? I would, number one, get a picture and say, honey, you can't disturb daddy's sleep. He has to sleep, right? So that he can do everything he needs to do the next day. Here's a picture of dad. It's going to be right next to your bed. And I would help her find something that replicates that feeling, right? She's looking for that feeling. What is it that feels just like that? And dad obviously has to help with this and say, look, honey, I think this fuzzy blanket feels just like this, right? So when you wake up, this is what you have to do until the morning. In the morning, we can be together. We're going to have breakfast together. We can say hello. But until it's morning and the clock says it's morning, that's what we're going to do. That's it. Because it may be a very physical thing for her body that she's, you know, disrupted in those sleep cycles. But at 4 years old, she has the capacity to start helping herself calm down. So we have to give her those tools, visual cues, tactile cues, right? Those things can help. And let me just ask one more thing. Did she ever have a history of anemia or low iron stores? No. Okay, fine. So then it probably is just behavioral. And in some ways, like, we have to give her the tools, but also reinforce the boundaries and say, everybody has to sleep until it's morning. Otherwise, we're all going to be cranky and unhappy.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. DS. I think you're still muted.
There we go.
Yes.
Sorry, I
Hi
got
there.
stuck on some driving screen. Hi, thank you, as everyone has said, for doing this. We have a 27-month-old now, I guess, and he has overall been a good sleeper. You know, we've had certainly when he's teething or sick, I had like regressions over his life, but he's been mostly gently sleep trained since he was like 6 to 8 months old. You know, even as recently as like 2 months ago, we do our bedtime routine, and he says good night to us and cheerfully kind of waves us to the door and hangs out and talks to his stuffies and sings songs, and it's very cute. And then in the last like month, maybe 6 weeks, he has gotten, I don't know what type, he has become more clingy. I don't know if it's like some kind of delayed separation anxiety, but it started with he wanted us to stay with him till he went to sleep or he would cry. But he fell asleep pretty quickly. So, you know, we embarked on that slippery slope. And so we would stay, pat him. It would take like, you know, an extra 20 minutes. Not terrible. He was also, you know, this season just runny nose, congested, what have you. So we're like, maybe he's just not feeling great. Maybe he was also getting a new molar. But then it just kept getting worse. So that became like we tried to leave after 20 minutes. And even though he was asleep and breathing, um, you know, breathing like he was
Wow.
sleeping, he was on
Yeah.
high alert to us leaving. And actually
Yeah.
we were still transferring him to the crib at that point. So we thought, okay, maybe it's the crib transfer that's the issue. A couple of nights we just had to let him sleep on like there's a queen bed in his room for guests that we would do his bedtime routine on, read books, etc., snuggle, and then he'd go to his crib. So then we were like, maybe he doesn't want to be confined in his crib. He is technically over the height limit for his crib. He's a very tall child. And he can climb out of it. So we're like, you know what, maybe we turn it into a toddler bed. So I wish we had attended this before we made that call, because that, you know, made things significantly doors. He
Right.
also can open doors. And so, and we don't feel comfortable locking him in his room.
Right.
But so he, it just spiraled basically where bedtime was taking, an hour and a half longer than just the normal, read books and sing routine. He was just on high alert to us leaving, no matter how
Mhm.
long he had been asleep. And then it progressed to middle of the night wakings where he demanded we come and hang out with him. And so we kind of felt like we're undoing all the training that he had, which in previous times we've done it, it took like 1 night, 2 nights, and he, adjusted his sleep and he was fine. So now we've had 2 nights running of trying to draw a hard line because all three of us are just wiped. We're exhausted.
Yeah.
And, we thought maybe he's scared of the dark. I like tried to keep a dim light on. I was like, do you want the light on? He says, no, he just wants us to stay. He's not, he doesn't dislike his bed. He likes hanging out on his bed. He'll talk about during the day how he's going to stay in his bed and snuggle his buds, his stuffed animals. But when push comes to shove, when we're actually going to leave the room, it's desperate clinging, like, his survival depends on our staying there. It's really
Yes.
sad. And then the last 2 nights, we've basically taken a hard line and say, you need to stay in your room. First, we said you had to stay in your bed, and that wasn't working. And he's ended up heartbreakingly falling asleep, like standing up with his face down on the bed in his room with his stuffy. And then he like wobbles and we think he's going to fall and he catches. And this has been, and then at some point we've tried to like move him into his bed and that restarts the whole thing again. And so we've had 2 nights of this, and maybe last night was slightly better than the first night, but he was still standing up for a lot of the night and it seems insane. Anyway, that's where we are.
Okay. A couple of things. It's completely normal and common for toddlers to fall asleep standing up, sitting up next to a gate at the doorway, sleep on the floor. Completely normal. I hear it all the time. And while we think it's ridiculous, it's like their protest, right? It's them saying, I will not do this willingly. It's a phase, it's going to pass, but he has to decide that, right? And it's really painful for us to watch because it's like you're going to bang your head and fall over. He has to learn that it's very uncomfortable and ridiculous, and that laying down is definitely the better option. So no more transfer. It doesn't work. Don't lay him down. He has to do it. Now, how do we convince him and sort of teach him, right? A couple of things. And I agree with you, locking a door, not a good idea, tends to create more anxiety than we're trying to solve for. So if parents ever want to close the door, extra tall gate, right? Not closing the door and locking it because it tends to be a safety hazard and it doesn't really help anyway. So extra tall gate allows for, I hear you. That doesn't mean it's a magic bullet. It just means it's keeping your child safe. The second thing is I would absolutely go to what I suggested for several other parents of sort of chore checks, but telling him, especially at this age, over 2 years old, telling him, let's say Saturday at a good time, and you know what, buddy, we're not staying anymore. We're going to do our chores and we're going to check on you, but we're not staying anymore. And we know you can do it. We know you can lay down and go to sleep, right? And stay in your room all night. And so you would do those time checks after the initial tuck in at 5, 10, 15. So you're elongating the time, and the things to sort of support him in that process are going to be, again, family photo where he can totally like look at it and see it, his stuffies or whatever he has. And did you mention that he has a light at all, like something like the hatch or something that indicates bedtime, morning time?
Yeah, we don't. The hatch that we have, I don't think is programmable. We can get one. We don't have a visual cue for when it's night and time to wake up. So we can add that.
Okay, yeah.
I should add that whenever he sees one of us, it kind of starts the whole thing again. So we
Right.
have been closing his door, but we're sitting right outside it. So every time he opened it, we're like, no, you go back in. So now he doesn't open it anymore,
Okay.
after like partway through night one because he just was rebuffed so many times.
Okay, so
But,
that's good. So continue just using your voice.
but he but he if he sees us, like, so if we do this 5-minute check, I feel like it may precipitate the whole
Correct.
yeah.
So don't, right? Just you can. I think that going full blown extinction is unrealistic. So that's why just you can use your voice. And maybe you start at 10 minutes. Maybe 5 is not even enough, right? Maybe you start at 10. Just say, hey buddy, great job, night night. Right? It's a very short, minimal acknowledgement. That's it.
Right, yeah, could we consider that even like overnight when he wakes up, like, do we talk to him through the baby monitor, or is that gonna like aggravate it more? I don't know.
The monitor can work well for people. Yeah. So you could try that. And again, if it's too stimulating for him to see you, absolutely just use your voice.
Yeah.
That's what I suggest 9 times out of 10 anyway,
Okay.
because they see us and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, it becomes this downward spiral.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, I think Steph was next.
Hi, thank
Hi
you so
there.
much.
Sure.
So I have two questions, I guess. We have about a 1.5-year-old and a 4.5-year-old. They're in the same room.
Mhm.
The 1.5-year-old is an early waker.
Mhm.
He'll wake between 5 to 5:30, sometimes 4:30 to 5:30, right? And it's that, like, towards the end of the night, you can see him transitioning. He's trying to put himself back to sleep, and then he looks like he does, but then he kind of can't, and just then it's fully up.
Yep.
So that's kind of one situation. And to try to address it, we thought, okay, well, maybe he's overtired. Let's inch up the bedtime slightly earlier. We've tried it slightly later, like, and it's super inconsistent with what'll work and what not won't work, to get him past that 6 o'clock mark. And then the other issue is the kids are in the room together.
Mhm.
And so we often have this back and forth of one waking the other up, and then one will settle, the other will say like a slight word, wake the other up again, and back and forth. And so it's kind of a struggle to manage that. So curious what your thoughts are there.
So what time is bedtime for the 1.5-year-old?
Typically around 7.
And
But
how does he?
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead.
What's happening lately is he'll kind of just like quietly toss and turn, like try to put himself to sleep, toss and turn a little in his bed. And so he's usually falling asleep around like between 7:30, 7:45,
Okay.
sometimes
And-
even 8.
Okay. And when you say early riser, what time does he wake up in the morning?
It's been anywhere from like 4:45 to 5:30.
Okay.
I mean, like a good day will be like 6:15.
Right. I'm going to say anything after 6 is totally
Yeah.
appropriate, right?
I want to get him past that 6 o'clock mark. Like before it, I just feel as
It may be hard because he is young and he's a year and a half and he's got a lot to do every day, right? What are his naps like?
They're good. They're usually 2.5 hours.
And does he put himself to sleep for the naps?
Yeah.
Okay. Is the room totally dark?
For bedtime? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And overnight. And there's nothing else going on that would potentially wake him at that 4:45, 5 a.m. time?
Our heater bangs.
Oh, yeah. 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 Those are really tough.
So we've
Is-
tried to kind of like increase the hatch sound a little bit. Maybe it'll dull it out, but
Yeah. I would use pretty loud white noise if possible. Because that's just, yeah, in the older apartment buildings, those steam heaters, it's really hard to
Yeah.
avoid, right? There's only so much you can do about that except to drown out the noise with white noise.
Yeah, totally.
And then, do your best not to respond to him anytime before 6. At 6, okay, let's go. Let's get in the
Yeah.
kitchen. Let's get near some bright light, right? And sort of set his clock. His
I think the
internal
tricky
clock.
thing with that is we've tried to do that, like leave him as long as possible. And when the kids were separated, we would. But now that they're together, we kind of don't want to wake wake our older one up. So recently we've kind of like rushed in to get him because it's been waking her up in the morning. So we kind of rush in. If we notice he's not settling back down
Right.
quickly enough, we'll get him so he doesn't kind of start talking too loud and screaming and waking her.
Yeah. I mean, you can also tell your older one. I mean, first of all, again, I would try to drown out the noise as much as possible. You can tell your older one, if you hear the baby, you can tell him, buddy, it's all night. Go back to sleep, night, right?
Yeah,
At
it
4 and a
tends to
half.
wake him up more. She's done
When she
that.
interacts. Okay.
And then we've also tried to tell her, don't say anything at all. Try to just like zone it out, stay asleep, keep your eyes closed.
Mhm.
It's 50-50 if it works for her.
Yeah. Look, that's life with siblings, right? There's only so much you can do about that. But I would try drowning out the noise further
Okay.
and do your best not to scoop him out, because that's really going to teach him, well, I can get up.
Wake up. Yeah.
Boy, that's really not the morning.
Okay. And then do you recommend like a little bit of a later sleep time, like bedtime, or just kind
I
of
don't
let him
think
be?
so.
Okay.
No, if anything, I think that's probably going to make it harder for him to sleep longer in the morning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. I think we have time for one more question from Laura.
Hi, Christina.
Hi.
So I'll try to be quick. I have a 9-month-old,
Yep.
and we have been trying to sleep train him, I guess, several times over the last 4 months or so, and it hasn't really worked. We did the more gentle approach. We've also tried to just kind of leave him in there and let him cry it out. And each time it got progressively better over maybe 3 days or so, and he was able to put himself to sleep. But eventually it just kind of fell apart. Some of it is probably our fault because we visited my mother, for example, so we changed his sleep location and whatnot. But basically, after every fail, it gets worse and worse. We used to be able to put him to sleep with me, just breastfeeding, and then transfer him to his bed, and at least that would work. So he wouldn't be sleeping with me, and once he woke up, I'd have to pick him up again. But lately, I can't even do that. He has become such a light sleeper. Any movement, any sound will wake him up. So we're just having a lot of difficulty, and it's like as if he doesn't want to sleep. He has this like FOMO, fear of missing out when there's
Right.
folks around and whatnot. So I'm still breastfeeding him. He wakes up 2 times a night, which I think is okay for this age. Although I know some kids sleep through the night. And yeah, we're just having a really tough time, and I'm not really sure what to do at this point.
Okay. So unless the pediatrician thinks that there's a difficulty with him gaining weight, he doesn't need to eat overnight at all. It's that his behavioral association at bedtime is I feed to sleep. So then every time he wakes up at night, he's like, well, I guess I have to feed to sleep so I can go back to sleep. Right. So I would say the first thing is to make sure he knows his crib. Right. As I was saying earlier, put him in the crib a couple of times a day just for 3 or 4 minutes so that he can look around and say, oh, this is my crib and I'm okay in here. You can stay in the room with him. You could even do peekaboo, right? 9 months is a big time for separation anxiety, and peekaboo helps babies and children realize that actually you're always going to be with me, even when I don't see you, right? So you can do that for a few minutes every day. That will help. And then at bedtime, you want to change how he's going to sleep. So no more feeding to sleep, because that is not necessary and it's also unsustainable. So I would reverse your bedtime routine. So you feed him in a well-lit place, then you do any bath or change, then put him in the crib awake. And as I was suggesting before, because he's really used to your presence, you can stay with him for a few nights in a row to help him understand that he can actually fall asleep in the crib. And after several nights, consider going to time checks and saying, buddy, I hear you, but it's night night. I'll be back. Right. But give him that confidence that he can actually fall asleep in the crib. He doesn't need to nurse to sleep because the transfer doesn't work anymore. And take maybe 2 or 3 nights and reduce and eliminate those night feedings. So some parents would go do that by reducing their minutes at each feeding. Some parents will say, okay, for the next, Friday and Saturday, I'm only feeding you once, not twice. And then Sunday, I'm going to 0, right? He will move those calories to the daytime within about 24 to 48 hours. So it's not as if you're going cold turkey and, you don't have to worry about that. It'll also feel better for you and your body. But that way you're reducing the night feedings, moving all of his food to the daytime and changing the behavior. Because the bedtime right now, he's convinced like I have to feed to sleep. He doesn't. He just doesn't know any other way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just have 2 questions about that. First, we have tried just putting him in his crib and kind of going through that process that you said. But when he's in his crib, he just basically screams his head off. And we try to console him and soothe him. And I haven't gotten to a place where I can get him to actually sleep on his own. I end up giving in because it's like 45 minutes to an hour and he's just screaming.
Right.
And my second question is, well, how does that affect my breast milk at night if I'm not feeding him? Because the lactation consultants are always saying, you have to wake up, you have to do the feedings at night, otherwise you won't produce as much.
Well, I would challenge that. It's that we want the same volume, but during the 12 hours of the day. Right? So you will, exactly why I said reduce it gradually, and maybe even take longer, maybe take 3 or 4 nights and just go to 1 night feeding and then go to
Okay.
0. First of all, he just by default, he's going to demand more the following days, right? So we're moving the demand to the day and your supply to the day. Okay. And you can do that more gradually than what I initially suggested. Okay. So that is, especially at this age, we're not worried about like his growth and feeding. Okay. We just want those calories during the daytime hours, let's say anytime from 7 to 7 or 6 to 8 or anything like that. Number 1. Number 2, if he finds it too stimulating for you to be there and support him, maybe time checks are the better way. Maybe because he's just going to scream and scream and scream, he actually needs to not see you. As we were saying before, some kids are very visually stimulated. So to see a parent actually makes them angry. Maybe he just needs to hear your voice and acknowledgement. Hey, buddy, night, night. I love you. I'll be back. Right. So maybe you leave after you put him down, give him those increasing intervals. If he's going to scream at you for an hour and it doesn't work because you give in, let's try time checks for at least 3 to 5 nights in a row and see, does that help him calm down more? Because many children find it too overstimulating to be in the presence of their parent. And the minute the parent leaves for enough time, the child's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually so tired. Okay, I'm going to go to sleep, because we remove that visual stimulation. And so checking with your voice can be helpful because you're acknowledging him, right? You're not just doing full blown cry it out, but it's not overstimulating. It's finding that sweet spot, which is hard. But that's what I would suggest.
Okay. We tried it for a bit and it worked, just that when we switched the environment, it stopped. So I guess we just have to restart it when we come back home.
Yeah, which is really common.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. Good luck with everything.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And the questions, I know that one parent's questions, so many other people will benefit from hearing those as well, and the responses. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out one more thing on this last screen. These are when people ask me, oh, what should I read? Because there's so much out there. These are the 3 resources that I almost always go back to. There's a book called Sleep, What Every Parent Needs to Know by Dr. Rachel Moon. It's actually published by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So everything is very pragmatic, science-based, and I just think she is a parent herself and comes at it from a great perspective. Harvey Karp, the inventor of the SNOO, has written a lot about child development and particularly sleep. And I think he has a lot of great, really practical suggestions. And then for the older children in particular, Dr. Kanapari, It's Never Too Late to Sleep Coach, which is just a horrible title, but the truth is he writes a lot about the older kids, and I think he has great suggestions. So that's another one for those sort of toddler and preschool age child that I usually recommend. So that's it.
Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, thanks so much, Susan. Thanks everybody for
Thank you.
participating.